I'm Captain Lisa Stewart, 30 years old, and I earned my wings flying C-17s for the United States Air Force. For years, I gave everything to my family, money, time, loyalty, trying to make them proud of what I'd built. But when my own father turned my career into a family joke, handing me a toy pilot's hat at my birthday dinner, something in me changed. Have you ever been mocked by the people you loved most? The ones who should have believed in you first? If you have, you're not alone. Before I get into what happened next, let me know where you're tuning in from, and if you've ever had to stand up for yourself after being underestimated, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your worth. What happened after that dinner changed everything. I sat in the back row of the officer training school auditorium, watching my father check his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. My commissioning ceremony was supposed to mean something. I'd spent 12 weeks learning how to lead, how to survive, how to represent something bigger than myself. But to Rick Stewart, it was just another Tuesday afternoon he'd rather spend at the golf course. When the commander pinned the gold bars on my shoulders and called me Second Lieutenant Lisa Stewart, I heard my mother's polite applause. My father's hands stayed in his pockets. On the drive back home, he broke the silence with what he probably thought was encouragement. Well, you made it through summer camp. What's next, desk duty? I kept my eyes on the highway. I'll be starting flight training at Little Rock. Flight training. He laughed, that short bark he saved for things he found absurd. Lisa, sweetheart, you get airsick on Southwest. My mother touched his arm. Rick, she just graduated. I'm proud. I just think it's funny, that's all. My daughter, the pilot. He said pilot the way other people said astrologer or professional mime. I'd always been close to my family. Growing up, I was the reliable one, the one who showed up when things got hard. When my father's truck died 2 weeks before my OTS start date, I drained my savings to cover the repairs. When my younger brother Ethan struggled with his college applications, I spent nights editing his essays until they shone. I wasn't looking for medals. I just thought love meant showing up. But somewhere along the way, showing up for them meant they stopped showing up for me. The jokes started small. At Thanksgiving, my uncle asked what I did in the Air Force, and my father jumped in before I could answer. She plays with computers. Flight simulators, that kind of thing. Like a really expensive video game. Everyone laughed. I smiled and passed the potatoes. At Christmas, my father handed out gifts with commentary. For Ethan, a new laptop. For the future engineer. For my mother, a spa day for putting up with us. For me, a gift card to Target and a wink, for when you get tired of playing Air Force and need real clothes. I used the gift card to buy my first set of combat boots. The thing about officer training school is that it strips you down to find out what you're made of. They push you past tired, past scared, past the version of yourself that needs permission to be capable. I learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. I learned to make decisions when every option felt wrong. I learned that leadership isn't about being liked, it's about being trusted when everything's on fire. My father never asked about any of it. Instead, he developed a routine. Whenever relatives visited, whenever neighbors stopped by, he'd find a way to work it into conversation. Lisa's doing her Air Force thing. You know, the pretend pilot stuff. He'd grin when he said it, like we were all in on the joke. The problem was, I'd stopped finding it funny somewhere between learning emergency ejection procedures and qualifying on my first aircraft. But I kept coming home. I kept showing up for birthdays and holidays. I kept pretending the jokes didn't land like punches. My mother had her own way of diminishing things. She'd pat my hand and say, "It's good you're staying safe on the ground." I worry less. I wanted to tell her I wasn't on the ground. I wanted to tell her about the C-17 Globemaster, the massive cargo aircraft I'd been training on, about the feeling of pulling back the yoke and feeling 280,000 pounds of aircraft respond to your touch. But she'd already changed the subject to Ethan's internship, and my father was making another joke about flight simulators, and I realized they didn't want to know. They wanted me to be who they decided I was. By the time I made first lieutenant at 26, I'd logged over 200 hours of flight time. I'd flown through thunderstorms that shook the aircraft like a toy. I'd landed in crosswinds that made seasoned pilots nervous. I'd proven myself to every instructor, every commander, every crew member who'd ever shared a cockpit with me. My promotion ceremony was scheduled for 1,400 hours on a Saturday. I sent the details to my family 3 weeks in advance. I called to remind them. I texted the address. The day came. I stood in my dress blues while Major David Ramirez read my commendation. He spoke about dedication and excellence, about the kind of officer who makes the Air Force better by being in it. He replaced my gold bars with silver ones, and the small crowd of fellow officers applauded. I scanned the faces. Colleagues, mentors, friends I'd made in the service. Not a single member of my family. That night, my mother called. "I'm so sorry, honey. Your father had a thing with the Rotary Club, and Ethan had a study group. We'll celebrate next time you're home." I sat in my apartment, still in my dress uniform, and felt something shift. Not break, that would come later. Just shift, like tectonic plates realigning under pressure. Major Ramirez found me in the hangar the following Monday. He'd probably heard I'd been working through lunch again, staying late, volunteering for every additional training slot that opened up. "You're pushing hard, Lieutenant." "Just trying to stay sharp, sir." He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "Your family make it to the ceremony?" I focused on the maintenance checklist in front of me. They had conflicts. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "They'll believe it when you're in the captain's chair." I looked up. "Sir, some people need proof they can hold in their hands. Keep flying. Keep getting better. The rest will follow." I wanted to believe him. But I was starting to suspect that some people would never believe, no matter how much proof you stacked at their feet. They'd just find new ways to explain it away. That night, I revised my understanding of what it meant to be close to your family. Maybe love didn't mean they showed up. Maybe it just meant you kept hoping they would. I was 26 years old, a rated pilot in the United States Air Force, qualified to fly multi-million-dollar aircraft in combat and humanitarian missions worldwide. And I was still trying to convince my father I wasn't playing pretend. The invitation came in a text from my mother, 3 weeks before my 20th birthday. "Dinner at home. Dad's excited to celebrate. Can't wait to see you." I'd been assigned to Air Mobility Command by then, officially qualified as a C-17 co-pilot. My logbook showed 512 hours of flight time, including 3 overseas rotations and 2 humanitarian missions. I'd flown relief supplies into disaster zones, evacuated civilians from conflict regions, and landed on runways that barely qualified as roads. None of which my family knew, because I'd stopped trying to tell them. My visits home had become exercises in selective disclosure. When they asked how work was going, I said, "Good," and changed the subject. When my father made his jokes, I smiled tightly and checked my watch. It was easier than defending myself. It was easier than hoping. But birthdays were different. Birthdays were supposed to be safe. I drove the 6 hours from base to my childhood home, arriving at 1800 hours. The house was full: aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. My mother hugged me at the door. "You look so thin. Are they feeding you?" "I'm good, Mom. Just been busy." My father appeared behind her, beer in hand, grin already in place. There she is. Ace Pilot Lisa, fresh from the danger zone. My uncle Mark laughed. "What's the Air Force got you doing these days, Lisa?" "Flying desks." "Something like that," I said, because the truth that I just returned from a week flying cargo runs between Guam and Darwin would only give them more material. Dinner was the usual chaos. Ethan talked about his engineering program. My mother fussed over everyone's plates. My father held court at the head of the table, telling stories that got louder and less accurate with each beer. Halfway through the meal, he clinked his glass for attention. "Everyone, everyone. I want to make a toast. To my daughter Lisa, who's been playing Air Force for 4 years now and hasn't gotten bored yet." Laughter rippled around the table. I kept my face neutral. "Seriously though," he continued, warming to his theme. "We're all very proud. Not everyone can commit to a hobby this long. I mean, I tried golf for a while, but Dad," Ethan said quietly. "What?" I'm complimenting her. "Lisa knows I'm kidding." He turned to me, eyes bright with alcohol and affection he mistook for acceptance. "You know I'm proud of you, right? Even if you're just saving the skies from PowerPoint." More laughter. My cousin Sarah, trying to help. "What do you actually do, Lisa?" Before I could answer, my father jumped in. "She flies simulators mostly. Training stuff. It's all virtual now, you know. Very safe. Very modern." I set down my fork. I'd been gripping it hard enough to leave marks on my palm. "Actually, oh, here we go," my father grinned. "Tell them about the time you landed the big plane, Lisa." "The simulation. It wasn't a simulation. Right. The one that felt real. That's what they're designed to do, honey. Very impressive technology. My mother's hand found my shoulder. Lisa, sweetie, your father's just having fun. Fun. I looked around the table at faces I'd known my whole life. People who'd watched me grow up, who'd come to my high school graduation, who'd been proud of me once. Now they were watching me like I was part of the entertainment, waiting for me to play along with the joke. My father wasn't finished. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a small wrapped box, presenting it with a flourish. For the birthday girl. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a child's toy pilot hat, plastic and cheap, the kind they sell in airport gift shops for $6. The word Captain was printed across the front in gold letters. The table went silent. Then someone, I don't remember who, laughed nervously, and that opened the floodgates. Soon everyone was laughing, and my father was beaming, so pleased with his cleverness. Get it, he said. Captain Lisa. I saw it and thought of you. I stood up carefully, the way I'd been trained to stand when receiving orders I disagreed with. Calm. Professional. In control. Thank you for dinner, Mom. This was great. Lisa, wait, my mother started. I have an early morning tomorrow. Long drive back. I picked up the hat, looked at it for a moment, then set it down on the table and walked to the door. My father called after me, oh, come on. You can't take a joke. I turned back. They were all watching me now, the laughter dying as they registered something in my expression. I can take a joke, Dad. I've been taking them for 4 years. Lisa, my mother said, standing. He didn't mean anything. I know. That was the worst part. He didn't mean anything. None of it meant anything to them. Happy birthday to me, I said quietly, and left. In the car, I sat in the darkness for several minutes before starting the engine. My phone buzzed. A text from my flight commander. Training reassigned. You'll be flying relief ops in the Pacific next month. Congratulations, LT. Well earned. I read it twice. Then I drove away from my childhood home toward the only place that had ever made sense. The thing about flying is that it doesn't care about your story. It doesn't care if your family believes in you. The aircraft responds to skill, to training, to confidence. Either you can fly or you can't. Either you're qualified or you're not. There's no room for maybe, no space for pretend. I'd been chasing my family's approval for years, trying to make them see me. But somewhere on that dark highway, with 200 miles still ahead of me, I realized something. I'd been looking for validation from people who couldn't see past their own assumptions. People who needed me to be small enough to understand. I thought about the hat. The cheap plastic captain's hat sitting on my mother's dining table. My father thought he was making a joke, but he'd accidentally told the truth. I was a captain, not yet in rank, but in every way that mattered. I'd earned the right to sit in that seat. I'd earned the trust of my crew. I'd earned my wings. I just hadn't earned them for my family. I'd earned them for myself. The base was quiet when I arrived at 0200 hours. I went straight to my quarters, unpacked my overnight bag, and opened my laptop. The assignment details were waiting. 6 weeks in the Pacific, flying humanitarian routes between Osan Air Base in South Korea and Manila. Long hours. High tempo. The kind of flying that would push me harder than I'd ever been pushed. I accepted immediately. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just lay in the dark and felt something settle inside me. A decision made without words. I was done explaining. Done defending. Done hoping they'd eventually understand. They thought I was playing Air Force. The truth was, this uniform had become the only place I ever felt real. The Pacific routes were brutal in the best way. We flew 3 to 4 times a week, long hauls carrying everything from medical supplies to equipment for the humanitarian missions that never made the news. I was paired with Captain Marcus Webb, a 15-year veteran who'd flown everything from C-130s to C-5s, and who treated every flight like it was both routine and sacred. He taught me things the simulators couldn't: how to read weather that wasn't on the radar, how to feel a developing problem through the controls before the instruments caught it, how to stay calm when everything was anything but calm. "You're good, Stuart," he told me after a particularly rough approach into Manila during a tropical storm. Better than good. You trust your training. I didn't tell him that trusting my training was easier than trusting anything else. The crew became my family in ways I hadn't expected. There was Technical Sergeant Maria Delgado, our loadmaster, who could calculate weight and balance in her head faster than I could input it into the computer. Staff Sergeant Kevin Park, our flight engineer, who knew our aircraft better than he knew his own apartment. And Senior Airman Jackson Riley, fresh out of tech school, who watched everything with the intensity of someone determined to be excellent. We lived in close quarters, worked impossible hours, and developed the kind of shorthand that only comes from shared stress. They knew I didn't talk about my family. They didn't push. In the military, everyone has a story about the people who don't understand. We were each other's witnesses instead. 6 months into the deployment, I made captain. 29 years old, ahead of the average promotion timeline. Major Ramirez called personally to congratulate me. Told you, he said. Captain's chair. Thank you, sir. You tell your family? I watched the sunset from the operations building, painting Ozen's runway in orange and gold. Not yet. Stuart. I will, sir. When I get home. I didn't. When I finally took leave and visited, I wore civilian clothes and kept the conversation light. My father asked how work was going. I said good and asked about his golf game. The new captain's bars stayed in my luggage. It was easier that way. What I found in those months wasn't just competence, it was belonging. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who measured worth by what you did, not by who you'd always been. Nobody cared that I'd been the quiet daughter, or the reliable sister, or the girl who'd funded her father's car repairs instead of her own dreams. They cared that I showed up on time, knew my checklists, and could be counted on when it mattered. Staff Sergeant Park said it best one night after a particularly long mission. We were doing post-flight checks, exhausted and efficient. You know what I like about flying, he said. It's the only place where nobody gives a shit about your story. Either the plane flies or it doesn't. Either you know what you're doing or you don't. Everything else is just noise. I thought about my father's jokes, my mother's excuses, the toy pilot hat I'd left behind. Yeah, I said. Everything else is just noise. The deployment was supposed to end in May, but they extended us through August. Nobody complained. We'd found our rhythm, and the work mattered. I logged over 800 additional flight hours, qualified for additional aircraft certifications, and earned my aircraft commander designation 3 months ahead of schedule. Captain Webb pulled me aside after the designation ceremony. You're going places, Stuart. I'm writing you a recommendation for test pilot school. Sir, I don't know if I do. And so do you. He was right. I did know. I'd known for a while that I was good at this. Not just competent, but genuinely skilled. The kind of pilot other pilots trusted. The kind of officer commanders gave the hard assignments because they knew I'd find a way. My family had been so busy laughing at the idea of me flying that they'd missed the part where I'd actually learned to do it. And then I'd gotten good. And then I'd gotten better than good. On my last night at Ozen before rotating back stateside, the crew threw together a going-away dinner at a restaurant off base. We ate Korean barbecue and told stories and made the kind of promises people make when they know they'll probably never work together again but want to believe they will. Sergeant Delgado raised her glass. To Captain Stuart, who showed up as a nervous lieutenant and leaves as someone I'd trust with my life. Hear, hear, Webb said. I'd fly with you anywhere, Captain, Park added. I looked at their faces, sunburned, tired, genuine, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not breaking. Opening. I'd fly with all of you anywhere, I managed. Later, walking back to the barracks under a sky full of stars I'd learned to navigate by, I called my mother. She answered on the third ring. Lisa, how are you? Are you still overseas? I'm rotating back next week. Oh, that's wonderful. Your father will be so happy. You should come for dinner when you're settled. Maybe. Lisa, he really didn't mean anything with that hat. You know how he is. I did know. That was the problem. Mom, I need you to understand something. Of course, sweetheart. I'm not playing Air Force. I'm an Air Force captain. I command a crew. I fly missions that matter. I'm good at what I do. Silence. Then, we know that, honey. No, you don't. But that's okay. I don't need you to anymore. Lisa, I love you, Mom. I'll call when I'm stateside. I have to go. I hung up before she could respond. Before she could explain or excuse or diminish. The stars were impossibly bright. I'd learned their names, learned to find my way by their light. I thought about Webb's recommendation, about test pilot school, about all the places I could still go and things I could still do. My father's voice played in my head one more time. Relax, you're not even a real pilot. I smiled in the darkness. Not at the memory, but at the distance I'd put between his opinion and my reality. I was real. I'd been real the whole time. They'd just been looking at shadows while I learned to fly. When I boarded the transport back to the States, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. Like I'd been trying to prove something that didn't need proving. Like I'd been waiting for permission that I'd never actually needed. The only validation that mattered was my crew's trust and my commander's respect and my own certainty that when it counted, I could do the job. Everything else, all the jokes and dismissals and toy hats, was just noise. And in the cockpit, wearing headphones that filtered out everything but what mattered, I'd learned to ignore noise. I'd learned to focus on the signal. The truth. The flight path ahead. I landed at Travis Air Force Base on a Tuesday morning, 30 years old, qualified on multiple aircraft, decorated for my service overseas. My family didn't meet me at the airport. I didn't expect them to. I'd stopped expecting anything except what I could give myself. Excellence, purpose, flight. It was enough. It had always been enough. I just hadn't known it until I stopped trying to make them understand. The commercial charter was supposed to be routine. A military-contracted civilian flight carrying a mix of contractors, military dependents, and a few off-duty service members. I wasn't even supposed to be on it, but I'd volunteered to observe a new Pacific route the Air Force was evaluating for future cargo missions. Jump seat observation, technically unofficial, but useful experience. The airline, Pacific Gateway, had a solid reputation and a contract with Air Mobility Command. Their captain, a former Navy pilot named Michael Torres, had 23 years of commercial flight experience. His co-pilot, First Officer David Chin, had logged over 8,000 hours. I introduced myself in the cockpit before departure, shook hands, confirmed I'd stay out of the way. Captain Torres grinned. Air Force, huh? C-17s. Yes, sir. Good bird. Welcome aboard. Just observe and enjoy the ride. The flight was Manila to Travis, with a refueling stop in Honolulu. 8 hours over empty Pacific, routine enough that half the passengers fell asleep before we reached cruise altitude. I sat in the jump seat, headset on, watching their flows and procedures. Different from military flying, but professional. Competent. At 1,300 hours, somewhere over empty ocean, Captain Torres unbuckled and stood. Nature calls. Back in 5. First Officer Chin nodded, took control, adjusted his seat. Standard procedure. Nothing remarkable. I was reviewing my notes when I heard it, a soft, confused sound from Chin. Then a louder noise. Gasping. I looked up. Captain Torres was on the floor, convulsing. Captain. Chin shouted. Then into the intercom. Medical emergency in the cockpit. Any medical personnel, please come forward immediately. I was out of the jump seat before conscious thought, dropping to Torres' side. His face was gray. His breathing was wrong, shallow, irregular. Cardiac arrest. It had to be. The cockpit door opened. A flight attendant, maybe 25, face frozen in shock. Get me anyone with medical training, I told her. Now. And prepare the cabin for possible emergency landing. She ran. Chin was trying to fly and look back at Torres simultaneously, his hands shaking on the yoke. What do I do? Jesus Christ, what do I do? Fly the aircraft, I said. The words came out calm, automatic. I've got him. You just fly. But even as I checked Torres's pulse, thready, barely there, I knew. We needed this man in a hospital, and we needed him there fast. And we needed someone flying this aircraft who wasn't falling apart. A passenger appeared, an off-duty EMT. We rolled Torres onto his back, started compressions. His heart wasn't beating right. Maybe not beating at all. How far to Hawaii? I asked Chin. 90 minutes. But we can turn back to Manila. It's closer, Hawaii's better. American hospital, better equipped for this. I was already doing the math. 90 minutes. A captain dying on the floor. A co-pilot spiraling into panic. 247 souls aboard. The EMT looked at me. He needs advanced care. Soon. I returned to the jump seat, put my headset back on. Chin was talking to himself now, running through procedures like a mantra. His hands kept drifting off the controls. First Officer Chin. No response. Chin. He jumped. Ma'am? How many emergency landings have you done? In real life? 2. Both with a captain. Jesus, he's dying. Torres is dying back there. Look at me. He did, eyes wide. You're about to have a full-blown panic attack, and I need you not to do that. Can you fly this aircraft right now, right this second? I don't know. Honest answer. Wrong answer. I made the decision in about 2 seconds. I'm taking control. Identify yourself to ATC and inform them we have a medical emergency and a command change. I'm Captain Lisa Stewart, United States Air Force. I'm assuming aircraft control under emergency authority. You can't just, I already did. Make the call. My hands found the controls. The Boeing 777 was heavier than anything I'd flown, but weight was just physics. Control surfaces responded the same way in everything that flew. The principles didn't change. Chen's voice shook as he radioed, Oakland Center, Pacific Gateway 747 declaring medical emergency. Captain incapacitated. Air Force Captain Lisa Stewart assuming aircraft command. Static. Then a controller's voice, careful and controlled. 747, say again? I took the radio. Oakland Center, Captain Stewart. I'm a rated United States Air Force pilot, aircraft commander qualified on C-17s, currently riding jump seat. Our captain is in cardiac arrest. Our first officer is not fit to command. I'm taking control and requesting emergency clearance to Honolulu International, most direct routing. Long pause. 747, confirm your military and assuming command of civilian aircraft? Affirmative. I'm certified, I'm current, and I'm your best option. I need that clearance. Another pause. Then, 747, you're cleared direct Honolulu, descend and maintain flight level 280. Emergency equipment will be standing by. Copy direct Honolulu, descending to 280. I started the descent, gentle and smooth. Behind me, the EMT was still working on Torres. I couldn't help him. My job was to get everyone else on the ground safely. Chin sat frozen in his seat. First officer, I need you with me. I can't, you can. I need you monitoring systems and running checklists. Can you do that? He swallowed hard. I think so. Good enough. Start with the emergency landing checklist. Call out each item. He fumbled for the binder, hands shaking, but he found his voice. Emergency landing checklist. Crew notification. His training kicked in, overriding his fear. We worked through the checklist together, his calls, my responses. Muscle memory taking over where courage failed. The 777 handled differently than AC-17, heavier and less responsive, but the fundamentals were identical. Attitude, airspeed, altitude. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Every pilot learned it the same way. I'd just learned it better. The flight attendant appeared in the doorway. Captain status. Passengers are scared but contained. Your announcement helped. I'd forgotten I'd made an announcement. Some part of my brain had handled that while another part flew the aircraft. Tell them the truth. Medical emergency, emergency landing, an Air Force pilot is flying, and we're going to be fine. Keep them calm. Are we? She asked quietly. Going to be fine? I glanced back at her. Mid-30s, professional, holding it together by force of will. Behind her, I could see passengers craning to look into the cockpit, faces tight with fear. 247 people. Yes, I said. Not because I was certain. Because they needed to hear it. Because confidence is contagious, and so is panic, and I knew which one kept people alive. She nodded and disappeared. Chin finished the checklist. That's everything. Good. Now help me with the approach briefing. I need to know this aircraft's landing configuration. We went through the numbers. Landing weight, approach speed, runway requirements. I'd never landed a 777, but I'd landed plenty of heavy aircraft in difficult conditions. This was just another approach. Just another day. Behind that calm assessment, some small part of me was screaming. But I'd learned to put that part in a box. I'd learned to function past fear. The Air Force had taught me that. My family's dismissals had taught me that. Every time someone had said I couldn't, I'd proven I could. Now I just had to do it 247 more times. One landing. 247 lives. No pressure. I tightened my grip on the yoke and watched Honolulu appear on the horizon. 60 minutes out from Honolulu, Torres's heart stopped completely. The EMT called it. I'm sorry. He's gone. Chen's breath caught. I kept my eyes forward. Cover him. Secure the body. Chen, I need you here. He's dead. I know. And 246 people are still alive. Stay with me. My voice had gone flat, almost mechanical. Emotional triage. Feel it later. Fly now. I contacted Honolulu Tower directly. Honolulu Tower, Pacific Gateway 747, requests direct vectors to longest available runway. Aircraft commander deceased, first officer compromised, Air Force pilot in command. 747, Honolulu Tower, you're cleared direct to runway 08 right. Wind 090 at 15 knots. Emergency equipment standing by. Copy runway 08 right. 08 right. 12,374 feet. More than enough if I didn't screw it up. The approach profile appeared in my head automatically, glide slope, airspeed, flap settings. I'd done this 1,000 times in different aircraft. Same physics. Same math. Same outcome if I did everything right. Chin was monitoring instruments, calling out altitudes, but his voice had gone hollow. I needed him functional for landing. First officer. Yeah. Tell me about your family. What? Your family. Who are they? He blinked, confused. My wife. 2 kids. Why? What are their names? Sarah, Ben, and Lily. Captain, I don't good. When we land, you're going home to Sarah, Ben, and Lily. I need you to picture that. Can you do that? He nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah. Good. Now call out approach speeds. He found the card, started reading numbers. His voice steadied. Sometimes you have to give people something smaller to focus on. Something manageable. Sarah, Ben, and Lily were manageable. Landing a 777 with a dead captain behind you is not. The senior flight attendant, Karen Liu, appeared at the cockpit door again. Captain, passengers are asking questions. Some of them saw the EMT working on Captain Torres. They know something's very wrong. Tell them the truth. The captain had a medical emergency and didn't survive. Tell them an Air Force pilot is flying and we're landing in 15 minutes. Tell them to review safety cards and brace positions. Some of them are crying. That's okay. Crying passengers can still follow instructions. Panicking passengers can't. Keep them informed and keep them busy. She nodded and left. I appreciated her calm. In crisis, you learned who people really were. Liu was solid. Chin was trying. Torres was dead. And I was flying. 40 minutes out, we started the descent. I'd studied the approach plates while Chin briefed, memorizing the whole procedure. Glide slope intercept at 2,500 feet, full flaps at 500, touchdown zone within the first third of the runway. The numbers aligned in my head like a checklist I'd written myself. 30 minutes out, I walked Chin through the landing configuration. Flaps to 15. Flaps 15. Geared down. Gear down, 3 green. The aircraft shuddered slightly as the landing gear deployed. More drag, more weight, different handling. I adjusted the trim, felt the controls respond. Still stable. Still flying. 20 minutes out, the tower updated winds. 747, wind 080 at 18, gusting 22. Crosswind. Of course it was a crosswind. I'd never landed a 777 in a crosswind. I'd never landed a 777 at all. But I'd landed C-17s in worse. Physics didn't care what aircraft you were flying. Wind pushed everything sideways the same way. 10 minutes out, Chin said quietly, I should be doing this. You're doing exactly what I need you to do. I froze. When Torres went down, I froze. Most people would have. You're still here. That's what matters. You didn't freeze. I've had different training. That was part of it. The other part was that I'd been dismissed and doubted so many times that crisis felt almost familiar. When nobody believes you can do something, you develop a particular kind of calm when it's time to prove them wrong. 5 minutes out, I saw the runway. Long stripe of gray against blue Pacific, emergency vehicles clustered at the sides like red and white toys. Final approach checklist. Chin ran through it, his voice almost normal now. Landing checklist complete. Tower, 747 on final, runway 08 right. 747, cleared to land. 08 right. Wind 075 at 20, gusting 25. The crosswind had gotten worse. Perfect. I lined up on the center line, adjusting for the wind drift. The runway grew larger in the windscreen. I could feel every gust now, feel the aircraft wanting to weather vane into the wind. I countered with rudder, kept the wings level with aileron, flew the approach with corrections so small they were almost instinctive. 300 feet. On glide slope. Airspeed good. 200 feet. Slight drift left. Correcting. 100 feet. The runway rushed up to meet us. 50 feet. I reduced power, started the flare. The aircraft hung in the air for an impossible moment, then the main gear touched down, firm but controlled. I deployed the thrust reversers, felt the deceleration press us forward against our harnesses. The nose gear settled onto the runway. We were down. I let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding. 747, exit at Taxiway Delta, contact ground on 121.9er. Copy, Taxiway Delta. I steered us clear of the runway, following the taxi lights. Emergency vehicles fell in behind us, a parade of rescue equipment that wouldn't be needed now. The engines spooled down. The cabin remained silent. I set the parking brake and pulled off my headset. My hands, I noticed distantly, were shaking. Chin was staring at me. You just landed a 777. We just landed a 777. I called out numbers. You flew it. Behind us, Torres's body lay covered. In front of us, 246 passengers sat alive and breathing. The math wasn't fair. It was never fair. But it was better than the alternative. Karen Lou opened the cockpit door. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Captain Stewart, the passengers are asking. She stopped. Started again. They want to know what happens now. Now we wait for ground crew. Then they deplane. Then they go home. They're going home because of you. I shook my head. They're going home because a lot of people did their jobs. Torres got us most of the way here. Chin kept systems running. You kept the cabin from panicking. I just landed. You saved 247 lives. 246. Torres didn't make it. You know what I mean. I did. But I wasn't ready to know it yet. I was still in the mode where you function past everything, where you feel nothing because feeling anything means feeling everything, and I couldn't afford that until everyone was safe. Let's get them off the aircraft, I said. Lou nodded and withdrew. Chin was still staring. How are you so calm? I'm not. I'm just good at pretending. He laughed, a little hysterically. Jesus Christ. We're alive. We're actually alive. Yeah, I said. We are. Through the windscreen, I watched emergency personnel approaching. The tower would have questions. The airline would have questions. The FAA would definitely have questions. But right now, in this moment, we were on the ground and everyone was breathing. I'd done what I'd been trained to do. What I'd spent years learning to do while my family joked about simulators and desk jobs. What I'd become so good at that when it mattered most, when lives hung on every decision, I'd been ready. My father's voice echoed in my memory. Relax, you're not even a real pilot. I'd just landed a Boeing 777 with a dead captain and a compromised first officer in crosswind conditions over the Pacific Ocean. I'd saved 246 lives. I wondered what he'd say now. But somewhere in the controlled breathing and the shaking hands and the aftermath of 3 hours I'd never forget, I realized something. I didn't care what he'd say. I'd stopped flying for his approval years ago. I'd done this for the people in the cabin. For Chin and his family. For Lou and her crew. For myself and my training and the certainty that when everything went wrong, I could make it right. The tower called for our gate assignment. Chin answered. I sat in the captain's chair, the one Major Ramirez had said I'd have someday, and let myself feel it. Not pride. Not yet. Just the simple truth. I'd been exactly who I needed to be. The news broke before I finished my statement to the FAA. Social media first, passengers posting from the tarmac, shaky phone videos of emergency vehicles, breathless accounts of the Air Force pilot who'd taken control. Then traditional media picked it up. By the time I checked into base housing at Travis the next morning, my phone had 43 missed calls and an inbox full of interview requests. The official Air Force statement was brief, Captain Lisa Stewart, stationed at Travis Air Force Base, assisted in the emergency landing of Pacific Gateway Flight 747 following a medical emergency. Captain Stewart is a qualified aircraft commander with over 1,200 hours of flight time. The Air Force is proud of her service and professionalism. Assisted. They'd been kind with that word. I read it at 0600, still in yesterday's clothes, still feeling the controls in my hands. My commander, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, called at 0630. Stewart. You doing okay? Yes, ma'am. Bullshit. You landed a plane with a dead captain and saved 246 people. Nobody's okay after that. I want you to take 3 days, talk to our mental health resources, and process this. Ma'am, I'd rather get back to, that's an order, Captain. You don't have to feel okay. You just have to not fall apart alone. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Good. Also, you're probably going to get a medal. Try to act surprised when it happens. She hung up. I sat in the quiet of my quarters and thought about medals. Torres's wife would get a flag and a pension, and the knowledge that her husband had died doing what he loved. What would I get? Recognition for doing my job? Validation I'd stopped needing? I took a shower, put on clean clothes, and checked my phone again. The missed calls included 3 numbers I recognized. One was my mother. I stared at her number for a full minute before calling back. She answered on the first ring. Lisa. Oh my God, Lisa, we saw the news. Hi, Mom. Your father and I have been trying to reach you. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine. The news said you landed a plane. A commercial jet. They said you saved all those people. The news is pretty accurate, yeah. Silence. Then, why didn't you tell us you could do that? I sat down on my bed, suddenly exhausted. I tried to tell you for 6 years. You thought I was playing pretend. Lisa, that's not Mom. I know you're proud now. I know Dad's probably freaking out. But I need you to understand something. I was always this person. I was this person when you laughed at my commissioning. I was this person when nobody came to my promotion ceremony. I was this person when Dad gave me a toy hat and made me the family joke. He feels terrible about that. Good. He should. More silence. Do you want us to come out there? No. Lisa, I'm serious, Mom. I'm processing a lot right now. I watched a man die. I had 246 lives, depending on me getting it right. I can't also manage Dad's feelings about finally believing I'm a real pilot. My voice cracked on the last words. I studied it. I need space. I need time. I'll call when I'm ready. We love you, sweetheart. I know. I love you too. But love doesn't mean you get to show up now and pretend the last 6 years didn't happen. I hung up before she could respond. Then I turned off my phone, lay down, and stared at the ceiling until sleep pulled me under. The nightmares started the second night. Torres on the floor, Chen's panicked breathing, the runway rushing up too fast. I'd wake in the dark, heart racing, hands gripping imaginary controls. The base psychologist, Captain James Park, told me it was normal. You experienced a trauma while performing under extreme stress. Your brain is trying to process it. These dreams are part of that. They feel real. They were real. That's why they're so vivid. Give it time. Time. Everyone kept telling me to give it time. On the 4th day, I went back to work. Paperwork, mostly incident reports, statements, follow-ups with the FAA and NTSB. My squadron treated me like I might break, all careful voices and offers of help. It was well-meaning. It was unbearable. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell called me into her office at 1500 hours. Sit down, Stewart. I sat. She studied me for a moment. The Distinguished Flying Cross. They're recommending you for it. Ma'am, I just did my job. Your job is flying C-17s. You landed a 777 in a crosswind with a compromised crew. That's not your job. That's extraordinary performance under pressure. Take the compliment. Yes, ma'am. Also, you're getting profile requests. Interview requests from every major network, offers for speaking engagements, a movie producer who wants your life rights, no. I figured you'd say that. But think about it. Your story could inspire people, could bring positive attention to the Air Force. My story is that my family spent 6 years telling me I wasn't good enough, and then I had to watch a man die to prove them wrong. That's not inspirational. That's just sad. Mitchell leaned back. Is that what you think happened? Isn't it? I think you became an exceptional pilot through hard work and dedication. I think when circumstances required it, you rose to the occasion. Your family's opinion doesn't enter into it. You didn't do this for them. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing it and feeling it were different things. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Always. I'm angry. I'm angry that it took this for them to believe me. I'm angry that Torres is dead. I'm angry that I have to feel proud of something that came from tragedy. And I don't know what to do with all that anger. You keep doing your job. You keep being excellent. And you let the anger fade in its own time. You don't owe anyone a timeline for processing this. I nodded. And Stuart? For what it's worth, anyone who couldn't see what you were before this wasn't looking hard enough. Don't let their blindness define your achievement. That night, my father called. I'd turned my phone back on that morning, screening calls, but his number kept appearing. Finally, at 2200 hours, I answered. Hi, Dad. Lisa. His voice was thick. I don't even know where to start. You don't have to start anywhere. I saw the news. I saw the interviews with passengers, the footage of the landing. I saw what you did. Okay. That's it? Lisa, you saved all those people. You're a hero. I'm a pilot who did her job. That's all I've ever been. No, your dad. I cut him off. For 6 years, you made jokes. You called my service a phase. You gave me a toy hat at my birthday and made me the punchline. Do you remember that? Silence. I remember. Good. Because I'm glad you finally believe I'm a real pilot. But I need you to understand that I was always a real pilot. I was real when you were laughing. I was real when you didn't show up to my promotion. I was real every single day you thought I was playing pretend. Lisa, I'm sorry. Are you sorry you didn't believe me? Or are you sorry you were wrong? More silence. Then, quietly, both. Okay, that's all you're going to say? Okay. What do you want me to say, Dad? That it's fine? That I forgive you? I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll get there. But right now, I'm still processing the fact that I had to nearly die, that someone did die for you to take me seriously. That's not fair. None of this is fair. That man had a wife and kids. He's dead, and I'm alive, and I get to be the hero of a story that never should have happened. And you get to call me and tell me you're proud, like that makes up for 6 years of mockery. So no, Dad, it's not fair. But it's real. Just like I've always been real. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. I thought about calling him back, apologizing, explaining. But I'd spent 6 years explaining. I was done. 2 weeks later, the formal ceremony. The Distinguished Flying Cross, presented by Colonel Sarah Bennett in front of my squadron and a crowd of base personnel. My mother and Ethan came. My father didn't. He sent flowers to my quarters afterward with a card. Proud of you. Always have been. Dad. I put the flowers in water and threw the card away. The medal sat in its case on my desk, beautiful and heavy. I thought about Torres, about his widow accepting a folded flag, about Chin and his family, about the 246 passengers who'd sent thank you letters I couldn't bring myself to read. I thought about my father's voice on the phone, about the years of jokes, about the toy hat sitting somewhere in my parents' house. And I thought about the moment in the cockpit when I'd taken control, when training and instinct had fused into something clear and true. I'd been good enough then. I'd been good enough before. I'd always been good enough. The difference was that now, finally, I believed it myself. For months after the landing, I went home. Not because I'd forgiven them, I hadn't, but because I'd realized that avoiding them forever gave them too much power. I needed to redefine the relationship on my terms, not theirs. I wore my uniform. Service dress blues, ribbons visible. The Distinguished Flying Cross sat above my left pocket, impossible to miss. It wasn't about showing off. It was about showing up as exactly who I was, without apology or explanation. My mother opened the door. She took one look at me and her eyes filled. Lisa. Hi, Mom. You look. She gestured helplessly at my uniform, at the medals, at the version of her daughter who'd stopped pretending they didn't hurt her. Official. I am official. Ethan appeared behind her. 22 now, about to graduate with his engineering degree. He'd sent a text after the news broke. Holy shit, Lisa. You're actually a badass. It was the kindest thing any of them had said in years. Hey. He nodded at me, something like respect in his eyes. Hey. My father was in the living room. He stood when I entered, drink in hand, uncertainty written across his face. We looked at each other for a long moment. "You came," he said finally. "I did. In uniform. I'm proud of my service." Seemed appropriate. He nodded slowly, working something out in his head. The silence stretched. "My mother broke it. I'll get dinner started. Lisa, your old room is ready if you want to freshen up." "I'm fine, Mom." I sat in the armchair across from my father. Ethan perched on the couch, clearly trying to decide if he should leave. I gestured for him to stay. Some things needed witnesses. My father cleared his throat. "I've been trying to figure out what to say to you for months. Say whatever you need to say. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about the Air Force, about what you were capable of. I was completely, totally wrong." "Okay, that's it? Just okay. What else do you want, Dad?" "You were wrong. You know it now. I knew it 6 years ago." He flinched. "I'm trying to apologize. I know. And I appreciate it. But an apology doesn't erase 6 years of being dismissed every time I came home. It doesn't bring me back the promotion ceremony you missed. It doesn't unmake the jokes. So what do I have to do? How do I fix this?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't expected. He was scared. Scared of losing me. Scared of the distance he created. Scared that sorry wouldn't be enough. "You can't fix it," I said quietly. "What happened, happened. You can only decide what comes next. And what do you want to come next?" I thought about that. I'd spent 4 months angry, grieving not just for Torres, but for the family relationship I'd thought I had. I'd mourned the version of my father who'd been proud of me before I'd proven anything, who'd believed in me just because I was his daughter. That father had never existed. Or maybe he had, but only for the version of me who'd fit his expectations. The real question was whether I could build something new with the father who actually existed, the one sitting in front of me now, flawed and sorry and finally willing to see me. "I want honesty," I said. "I want you to stop pretending you always believed in me, because we both know that's not true. I want you to acknowledge that you hurt me. And I want to move forward without needing your approval for my choices." That seems fair. It's not about fair, Dad. It's about reality. I love you. I probably always will. But I don't trust you with the parts of myself that matter most. I don't know if I'll ever trust you with those parts again. His eyes were wet. "I hate that." "Me too." Ethan spoke up. "For what it's worth, Dad's been watching the news coverage obsessively. He saved every article about you. He tells everyone what you did." "Ethan," my father said. "No, she should know. You're proud of her now. You just don't know how to admit you weren't proud before." My father looked at me. "He's right. I am proud. Seeing what you did, reading about your career, the things I didn't know because I never asked, because you never listened. I tried to tell you. I know. And I'm sorrier than I can say." Dinner was awkward. We talked around the big things, sticking to safe topics. Ethan's graduation plans. Mom's book club. My next posting, I'd been offered an assignment to Air Education and Training Command at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. I'd be training new pilots. Somehow that felt right. At one point, my father asked about the landing. "What was it like? When you realized you had to take control?" I cut my chicken, considered the question. Clarifying. Everything else fell away except what needed to be done. There wasn't time to be scared or to wonder if I was good enough. There was just the aircraft and the runway and all the people depending on me getting it right. Were you scared? After. During, I was just focused. "Torres's wife," my mother said softly. "I saw an interview with her. She said she was grateful you were there. I wish I hadn't been there. I wish he'd lived. But if you hadn't been, 246 people would be dead." I know. I run that math every day. The table went quiet. My father said, "I wish I'd been at your commissioning." I looked up surprised. "I wish I'd been at your promotion ceremony. I wish I'd taken every single moment of your career seriously from the start. I wish a lot of things, Lisa. But we don't get do-overs." "No," I said. "We don't." After dinner, I found the toy pilot hat. It was exactly where I'd left it, on a shelf in the living room, dust gathering on the plastic brim. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. "You kept it," I said. My father stood in the doorway. "I kept it to remind myself of the moment I realized I'd been treating you like a joke. And I'm ashamed every time I see it. But I can't throw it away. It feels like erasing what I did." I set it back on the shelf. Don't erase it. Remember it. Remember what it felt like to be wrong. And do better. I'm trying. I know. I turned to face him. Here's the thing, Dad. I've realized that I don't need you to be proud of me. I spent years wanting your approval, and it nearly broke me. What I need is for you to respect me enough to believe me when I tell you who I am. I do. I will. We'll see. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something, an acknowledgement, a starting point, a tiny crack in the wall I'd built. That night, lying in my childhood bed, I thought about Major Ramirez's words from years ago. They'll believe it when you're in the captain's chair. He'd been right, but he'd also been wrong. They believed it when I saved 246 lives. They believed it when the proof was undeniable, public, impossible to dismiss. Before that, all the captain's chairs in the world hadn't been enough. I thought about Torres. About how life isn't fair, how some people die doing their jobs while others become heroes for just surviving. I thought about Chin and his shaking hands. About Karen Lu's steady voice. About all the people who'd been there when it mattered. And I thought about myself, the girl who'd enlisted to prove something, who'd become a pilot to chase validation, who'd finally learned to fly for herself alone. I'd stopped trying to make them proud somewhere over the Pacific, with a dead captain behind me and a terrified co-pilot beside me and a plane full of people trusting me to bring them home. That's when I'd become exactly who I needed to be, someone who didn't need permission to be capable. Someone who didn't need validation to be real. Someone who'd been good enough all along. Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama felt like a new beginning. I reported as Major Lisa Stewart, freshly promoted to 04. My ribbon rack expanded to include not just the Distinguished Flying Cross, but an Air Medal and 3 Air Force Commendation Medals. I was 34 years old, and I'd been selected to lead a training flight for new Air Force pilots. Teaching. It hadn't been my plan, but somehow it felt inevitable. I'd learned what it was like to be dismissed and doubted. Maybe I could help the next generation avoid that, or at least prepare them for it. The first day, I stood in front of 23 second lieutenants, fresh from their commissioning, all nervous energy and pristine uniforms. They looked impossibly young. Had I ever been that young? I'm Major Stewart, I said. I'll be your primary instructor for the next 6 months. Some of you will wash out. Most of you will succeed. All of you will learn what it means to be responsible for an aircraft, a crew, and a mission. Questions? A lieutenant in the front row, name tag reading Harris, raised his hand. Ma'am, is it true you landed a 777 in an emergency? It's true. That must have been incredible. It was necessary. Incredible is when you do something amazing by choice. Necessary is when you do it because people will die if you don't. Don't confuse the two. They settled into their seats, absorbing this. I continued, you're all here because you want to fly. Some of you want glory. Some want to serve. Some just want the challenge. Whatever your reason, understand this. Flying isn't about you. It's about the mission. It's about your crew. It's about everyone who depends on you making the right call at the worst possible moment. Have you ever made the wrong call, ma'am? Harris again. Brave kid. Yes. I've made mistakes. I've also learned from them. The difference between a good pilot and a dead pilot is whether you have time to learn from your mistakes or not. My job is to give you that time. Over the weeks, I discovered I was good at teaching. Not just the technical skills, anyone with experience could teach those, but the mindset. How to stay calm when everything was wrong. How to trust your training when your instincts screamed. How to lead when you were terrified. Lieutenant Harris turned out to be one of my best students. Sharp, dedicated, willing to admit when she didn't understand something. After a particularly difficult simulator session, she lingered. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How did you know you were good enough? When you took control of that commercial flight, how did you know you could do it? I considered the question. I didn't know. I just knew I was the best option available. Sometimes that's enough. But what if you'd crashed? What if you'd gotten everyone killed? Then they'd have died anyway. The captain was already dead. The co-pilot was compromised. Someone had to fly. I was trained, I was current, and I was there. So I flew. Weren't you scared? Terrified. But fear doesn't make you incapable. It just makes you careful. And careful is good when you're landing a plane full of people. She nodded, working through it. My family doesn't think I'll make it. They think I'm too small, too young, too female. I smiled thinly. My family thought I was playing pretend for 6 years. Prove them wrong. Or don't. Just prove yourself right. She left with something firmer in her stance. I recognized it. I'd found that stance somewhere over the Pacific. 3 months into the training cycle, Colonel Sarah Bennett visited from her new posting at the Pentagon. She'd been the one to recommend me for the Distinguished Flying Cross, and we'd stayed in occasional contact. Major Stewart. She shook my hand firmly. Good to see you thriving. Thank you, ma'am. Walk with me. We walked the flight line, the Alabama sun beating down on us. She got to the point quickly. How would you feel about a permanent position in training command? We need experienced pilots who can teach, especially pilots who've proven themselves under pressure. I appreciate that, ma'am, but I'm not sure teaching is my long-term plan. Why not? You're good at it. Your students respect you. Your evaluations are excellent. Because I became a pilot to fly, not to talk about flying. She stopped walking. Major, I'm going to tell you something that took me 20 years to figure out. There are a lot of ways to serve. Flying missions is one. Training the next generation of pilots to fly those missions is another. And it's just as important. With respect, ma'am, it's not the same. No, it's not. But it's valuable. And you have something to teach that goes beyond stick and rudder skills. You teach resilience. You teach self-belief. You teach that what other people think matters less than what you can do. She was right. I knew she was right. But I also knew I wasn't done proving things to myself yet. I'll think about it, ma'am. Good. In the meantime, there's someone who wants to meet you. She led me to the visiting officer's quarters. A woman in her mid-40s stood waiting, civilian clothes, eyes red from crying. Major Stewart, this is Elizabeth Torres. Captain Michael Torres's widow. The air left my lungs. Mrs. Torres. We shook hands. Hers were cold. I've been wanting to meet you, she said. I wrote you a letter, but I wasn't sure you received it. I had received it. I'd read it once and couldn't bring myself to read it again. I got it. I just didn't know how to respond. You don't have to respond. I just needed to say thank you. In person. Mrs. Torres, Michael loved flying. He loved his job. He always said that if something happened to him in the air, at least he'd die doing what he loved. Her voice cracked. But knowing he died might have killed everyone on that plane. That would have destroyed him. You saved his legacy. You saved all those people. You gave his death meaning. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, felt inadequate. You're welcome, felt wrong. I wish things had been different, I managed. We all do. But they weren't. And you were there. That matters. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Michael was religious about writing notes to our kids. Little pieces of advice, stories, lessons. I found this one after he died. I want you to have it. Mrs. Torres, I can't please. He'd want you to have it. I took the envelope. After she left, I sat alone in the training building and opened it. The note was dated a week before the flight. Michael's handwriting was neat, deliberate. To whoever reads this, if I'm gone, remember that flying isn't about the individual. It's about the mission and the people counting on you. Be good at what you do. Be better than you think you have to be. And if things go wrong, trust your training and trust your crew. Someone will step up. They always do. I folded the note carefully and put it in my pocket. That night, I called my father. We'd been talking more regularly since my visit, careful conversations that circled around the hurt without diving into it. Lisa, how are you? I'm good, Dad. Just finished another training cycle. My students passed their final evaluations. That's wonderful. You're teaching now. Yeah, turns out I'm decent at it. Of course you are. You were always good at explaining things. Remember when you tutored Ethan? I did remember. I remembered a lot of things. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. When you made those jokes about me playing Air Force, did you actually believe I wasn't capable? Or were you scared I was? Silence on the line. Then, both. I was scared something would happen to you. And it was easier to pretend you weren't doing anything dangerous than to accept that my daughter was flying military aircraft. The jokes were my way of coping. That's not an excuse. I know. But it's the truth. Okay, you're doing that thing again. What thing? Saying, okay, when you mean something more complicated. I smiled despite myself. Maybe I'm getting better at not needing to explain everything. Or maybe you're still angry and being polite about it. Maybe that too. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. When we hung up, I realized the anger had faded to something else. Not forgiveness. That would take more time, but acceptance. He was who he was. I was who I was. We were learning to exist in the space between those truths. 6 months after arriving at Maxwell, I received orders for my next assignment. Test pilot school at Edwards Air Force Base. Captain Webb had made good on his recommendation. I'd be testing experimental aircraft, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. It was exactly what I'd wanted. Before I left, Lieutenant Harris found me packing my office. "You're leaving, ma'am?" "New assignment. Test pilot school." Her eyes went wide. "That's incredible. You deserve it. So will you, if you keep working like you have been. Ma'am, I wanted to thank you for what you taught us. Not just about flying, but about..." She struggled for words. "About believing we belong here. Do you believe you belong here?" "I do now." I shook her hand. "Then I did my job. Fly safe, Lieutenant." "You too, ma'am." I walked out of Maxwell Air Force Base with my belongings in a duffel bag and my future in front of me. I thought about Torres's note, about belonging, about the long journey from second lieutenant who needed her family's approval to major who'd stopped needing anyone's permission to be exactly who she was. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped trying to make them proud. That's when I finally became someone worth being proud of. I stand at the podium 3 years after everything changed. Major Lisa Stewart now, decorated test pilot, accepting an award I never asked for. Colonel Bennett insisted this ceremony matters, not for me, but for everyone watching. So here I am in dress blues, looking out at an auditorium full of faces that see me as proof of something. In the back row sits my father. 8 hours of driving to be here. I didn't invite him. Our eyes meet across the crowded room, and we both nod, uncertain of what comes next. Colonel Bennett talks about service and sacrifice before introducing me to applause I still don't know how to accept. I look at the young pilots in the audience, at the older officers who remember when women couldn't fly combat aircraft, at my father watching his daughter receive recognition he once thought impossible. I tell them the truth about that day Captain Torres died. It wasn't heroic. It was competence meeting necessity. I was trained, current, and there when people needed someone to fly. The media wanted a miracle story. But I was just a scared pilot who'd spent years learning her craft. Someone who'd been doubted and dismissed. Someone who'd been told she was playing pretend. My father goes very still in the back row. The real lesson isn't about landing a commercial jet in an emergency. It's simpler than that. You don't need permission to be capable. You don't need anyone's approval to do your job. You just need to be so good that when the moment comes, you're ready. Everything else, the doubt, the mockery, the people who think you're not serious, all of that is just noise. I tell the room what I wish someone had told me years ago. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who will never be convinced. Prove it to yourself instead. Because when everything goes wrong and lives are on the line, the only opinion that matters is whether you believe you can do the job. After the ceremony, my father approaches. "We haven't fixed what broke between us, just learned to exist around it through careful phone calls and selective honesty." He wants to talk. Really talk. I give him 1 hour. At a cafe off base, he brings up the toy pilot hat, the one he gave me as a joke at my birthday 6 years ago. His wife wants him to throw it away. Too morbid, keeping a reminder of the worst thing he ever did to me. I tell him to keep it. Remember what it felt like to be wrong. Remember that I was always capable, and he just couldn't see it. Maybe it'll make him better with other people who need someone to believe in them before they've proven anything. He says he's proud of me now. Tells everyone about my accomplishments. I point out the obvious. That's for him, not me. That's him trying to feel better about the years he didn't show up. It doesn't change what happened between us. He asks what would change things. I look at this man who hurt me without meaning to, who's trying now in his clumsy way to make amends. Time, I tell him. Honesty. And accepting that I don't need his pride anymore. I have my own. What I'd like is for him to actually see me. Not the hero from the news. Just his daughter, who was always good enough even when he couldn't see it. He says he sees me now. I tell him to keep looking. We finish our coffee. He walks me to my car and tells me he's sorry, not just for who I became, but for not being proud of who I was becoming. It's not perfect. It doesn't erase 6 years of dismissal. But it's something. On the flight back to California, I text him, "Still keeping the hat?" His response comes quickly, "Yeah." Reminds me to do better. We're not fixed. Maybe we'll never be fully fixed. But we're honest now. And honest is better than proud. I look out at the clouds below, at the sky I learned to navigate without permission. Some people need to see the smoke before they believe in fire. I learned to fly without witnesses. That was the only flight that ever mattered. That's my story. I did the job, we landed, and the noise finally went quiet. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been dismissed by family until results forced respect? What boundary did you set, and what changed after? If you were in my seat, would you call them out or let the landing speak for itself? For the pilots and crew here, what's your go-to calm under pressure habit? Drop your answers in the comments. If this resonated, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a push to back themselves when no one else will.